After a brain injury, survivors often feel overwhelmed and just like on edge all the time. If you have felt that way, I want you to know you're not alone. And one of the reasons could be nervous system dysregulation. So today we are going to talk about nervous system safety and how we can incorporate this into our recovery. There is always hope, and you are not alone.
Hi, I'm Cristabelle Braden, and this is my brain injury podcast, Hope Survives. Here we share information, education, and support for the brain injury community. This is an uplifting podcast to bring hope to your darkest days. As a survivor of traumatic brain injury and multiple concussions, I know what it's like to struggle to find hope. I don't want anyone to feel as alone as I did, and that's why I started my online community called Hope After Head Injury. This podcast is an extension of that, and I'd love to invite you to join along as we explore the realities of life with brain injury, with messages of encouragement, interviews with doctors and professionals, and survivor stories. No matter where you're at on your journey, there is always hope.
With a little hope, you can make it through today. With a little faith, someday you'll get through the pain. Just a little love is enough to light the way through your darkest night. Hope survives. Hope survives.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Hope Survives podcast. Today's topic on nervous system safety is something that I really need myself this week. I have been dysregulated by just some things that have happened in my life. This month, I am overwhelmed, I'm exhausted, and to be frank, I am forgetting stuff, I'm having symptoms, and I'm just not on top of things. So I've been feeling really I'm repeating myself. I'm overwhelmed. I feel like I can't function on a regular level right now. And so um, I'm just overwhelmed. And you might be feeling that way when you turn this on. And so today I'm thrilled to be able to share this conversation with you. It's with occupational therapist Shelley Latendresse. We recorded this a couple weeks ago, and she just blew me away with her compassion and encouragement for self-compassion, which is something I definitely need to hear this week. She also has had her own brain injury struggles, and so she even knows what it's like to feel dysregulated in your nervous system. And so she's going to provide some practical steps and tools on how to create safety in your nervous system. Some things with your environment, some things with figuring out, activities that help you to feel calm, not getting stuck in that freeze state. I think that's where I get stuck. I get stuck in freeze. So it's like, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, I guess they say. And I get stuck and I just can't. I just can't do stuff. And I get really overwhelmed. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. And I hope that it's encouraging to you and helpful on your own journey. So, as always, the invitation's open to join our Zoom support groups. And I'm so glad that you are here. You are not alone. And we're all in this together, guys. I have my up days, which the days I record the episodes are usually the better days. And I have my down days and weeks. And so we're kind of we're figuring all this out together. So, all right, there's always hope. And let's get into the interview.
Hope survives. Hope survives.
Well, today I'm here with Shelley Latendresse, who is an occupational therapist. Shelley, thank you so much for coming on Hope Survives podcast. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive into today's conversation.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to learning from you and for all our listeners to learn from you. But before we get into talking about today's topics, can you introduce yourself, share a little bit about what got you into occupational therapy and what got you into working with people with brain injuries?
For sure. My background is in brain injury, but also in neurodevelopment and something called sensory integration, working with a neurodiverse population. And honestly, this background has actually helped me immensely in this field of concussion that I'm working in now, and that might unfold later as we get into details. But also, besides all my neuro background, my background is in yoga and athletics. I'm a cyclist, and I'm very active. And also, my background is firsthand concussion experience. So I had a ski crash in 2017, and quite a handful of recreational concussions following that, from, I would say, a combination of bad luck and impaired systems, which we'll get into, that I maybe didn't realize were impaired. And I think probably, Cristabelle, you can relate to this.
Yeah.
If you don't know where your body is in space and you're not noticing your peripheral vision, et cetera, that can lead to like more concussions. And so that was sort of what happened for me, losing my balance, missing the stair, blah, blah, blah. And I also got, I was agitated and tired all the time and angry. And so I've been through that perpetual cycle firsthand. And so that is what led me to working in concussion. And I just felt like OT has such a big role here that hasn't fully unfolded, because an OT basically is trained to look at a whole person, right? And what they do and what their meaningful activities are, and helping people achieve their potential. And so this is our specialty. This is what we are trained in. And so that is where I felt, you know what, OT needs a bigger role in the concussion world. We have so much potential. So I put together my experience and in all parts of life. And that's why I'm here now working in the field of concussion.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And it sounds like from your personal experience, you get it. You get how it feels to just feel off all the time and even not even know precisely where that offness is coming from. And it can get really overwhelming. And I'm sure our listeners can relate to that overwhelming feeling. So, one of the things that we had discussed was something called nervous system safety. So, can you explain what that means and why it's relevant for those with brain injuries?
Yes. It's almost like this key catchphrase in sort of the wellness world right now. And like many catchphrases, people just kind of go with it and don't really know what it actually means. So I want to break that down for you guys, and how our nervous system can be this barrier to our concussion recovery. So I might get a little technical. Hopefully that's okay. But I want to paint a picture, and then we'll go from there. So as you guys probably know, a concussion chemically in the brain resolves, sort of that whole storm resolves like in the first month or two. But then we can be left with these impaired symptoms. And if we are, impaired systems. And if we are, then that's what leads to persistent concussion symptoms. And this key sort of holistic piece in concussion recovery that gets overlooked is creating safety in the nervous system. So let's step back and look at what is the nervous system. So basically we have our brain, this computer processor, right, that's connected through the brainstem to the spinal cord. And that's kind of like that's our central nervous system. And that's supposed to send accurate messages all the time, and everything's supposed to be working perfectly to move and like operate our bodies, right? And then we have this peripheral nervous system, which is all the nerves that go to the rest of the body. So there's two parts of that. One is this somatosensory piece, and that's like messages of what we touch and pain and position sense of where our body parts are. Okay, so that's one piece of the peripheral nervous system. And the other is the autonomic nervous system, that piece. And that controls our heart rate and our gut and other organs. And it operates like automatically behind the scenes, determining when we need to be like in high alert and when we can relax. And this is the piece that's been getting a lot of attention in the wellness world, right? And that most people are talking about. But I wanted to paint the whole picture of the nervous system because it's kind of cool if you understand that it's not just the autonomic piece, right? There's this whole central piece, like is our brain processor, these messages going correctly? And then peripheral, are all these messages going correctly? So, but the autonomic is the one that perceives the threat, like a radar, like is there danger around? Does that make sense, Cristabelle, so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel that we've talked a lot about the autonomic nervous system on the podcast as it relates to dysautonomia after concussion. But I'm really interested to hear how you're going to break this down.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So this, we'll keep on the autonomic a little bit because what I want you guys to understand with knowing the other stuff now, the autonomic judges, like it's got this feelers out, radar, is there danger? And it judges that by a couple of things. So you'll often hear about memories and traumatic experiences, right? And past traumatic events, which are stored like deep in the brain. And then when anything kind of resembles that trauma, and when I say trauma, it could be like the golf ball that flew out of the game and that's how you got your concussion, hit you in the head, right? It could be any event. But when anything resembles your trauma, so let's say you fell on the ice and now with walking your dog, now you avoid walking your dog, or maybe you avoid winter, or all those kind of key things. Oh no, there's ice, can set off these alarms in that nervous system, in that autonomic nervous system. So that's the piece that a lot of the wellness world's talking about. Like, does that make sense? This sort of like emotional trauma and events stored deep in the brain, these memories. So that's one thing that can set off that alarm. But also, here's the key. What we perceive right now also sets off the alarm. So is there a threat in this scenario? Now, going back to the other pieces, the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system. So imagine if your vision, your vestibular, your sensation, your neck position sense, your feet position sense on the floor, if some of these things, some of these messages are impaired by concussion, you're going to perceive a threat in your immediate world, even if there isn't one, right? So like, oh, something's going to hit me on the head. And I'm sure that we can anyone who's had concussion can joke about this, but still it's very real. If you remember flinching at overhead cupboards, freaking out when someone slams the brakes on the car, or maybe you avoid going to baseball games, all these sort of things that really sucks because people with PCS usually get this double whammy of feeling unsafe in the nervous system because of both. They have like a lot of trauma, and then they also have this perception of threat because those other parts of the nervous system, and those can have interrupted messages or the wrong messages, right? Or missing messages. So vision is part of the central nervous system, for example, right? And what we were mentioning before, that other peripheral nervous system where your feet step, if you don't have a good sense of body position sense around you, then your autonomic nervous system is taking all the heat. It is always flying into danger. And here's the key. When you walk around feeling unsafe, it's not your fault. It's exhausting. It sucks. And you cannot rehabilitate those other impaired systems. and you become stuck. So that is sort of what I wanted to throw out there. Do you have any questions? Does that make sense?
So you're basically saying that when your autonomic system, nervous system is affected and you're kind of stuck in that mode, it's harder to rehab anything else. It just kind of
That's right.
leaves you in that overwhelm. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah,
But
you're
that like
stuck. Yeah. You're stuck pretty much. Because you cannot improve, let's say you cannot to improve a lot of the impaired systems from persistent concussion, you do have to push into those systems a little bit. You have to get moving the head more, for example, to improve that vestibular system. You have to recalibrate. You have to do those vision exercises, even if they bring you some symptoms, right? So, but if your nervous system is constantly flying into that fight or flight, and constantly feeling threat, then you cannot push into it. You just hit a wall. And so I think a lot of times, like this is ignored, and then the rehab fails, right? Or a person just avoids everything. And so, we can get into that different problems people have in their rehab. But, and there's the psychosocial impact of being like this, of being always feeling threat, because
and
friends
always
and
feeling
family,
on
like,
edge.
yeah, feeling on edge. So you can have anger. I remember getting really mad at my daughter for slamming on the brakes in the car, that kind of crazy stuff, right? Or people think you're being dramatic or reactive, or you stay home and avoid crowds. And this can all be because you do not feel safe in your body, or in, and it's not just the, piece in the amygdala, but it's also that perceived threat, because you're not interpreting the world properly because of the impaired systems. Is this
Yeah.
something you ever experienced, Cristabelle?
Oh yeah. And I have talked to other survivors that are support groups and stuff as well. And I found that a lot of people who have some form of autonomic dysfunction, it gets misdiagnosed as anxiety. And that
Yes.
happened with me where, I had gone through other traumas. Like years ago, I was in an abusive relationship and I had some pretty, like other things outside of brain injury that affected me traumatically as well. And I was seeing this neuropsychologist and we did biofeedback. And
Right.
it was helpful because the biofeedback helped me to recognize, but when my heart rate was going off, but I had undiagnosed dysautonomia. So my heart rate getting really high, it wasn't anxiety all the time. Maybe sometimes it was anxiety from a psychological perspective, but most of the time it was an increased heart rate from my nervous system being on edge and my blood pressure being really low. And so I didn't know those pieces. And I kept thinking, why do I still have anxiety? I feel like I'm talking through my problems and I'm working through it and what's wrong with me. And so many times these things get misdiagnosed as a mental health situation when it could be something else entirely, I think.
That's so true. I've had people go wait to see cardiac specialists because their heart rate issues, or, it definitely can be missed. It definitely can be missed. And that's why I want more people to know, to understand this is a significant piece of concussion recovery. And like you
So,
said, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, if someone's listening and they're like, okay, how do I know if I have this? Can you like list off some things for people to look for?
Right. For sure. So, having persistent concussion symptoms is the big, if you do have persistent concussion symptoms, you likely have an element of this. So I would treat most people with persistent concussion symptoms, unless they're, back into their sport and not having any, feelings of unsafety. But it's not just feelings. So it's like flinching, avoiding, having dramatic responses to things, having significant symptoms come on in certain situations. It really, there's sort of a treatment approach that we can get into that can cover it to see if if you cover all of your bases of creating safety, because no matter what, you've had a concussion. And right there, that puts a traumatic event into the amygdala storage, right? But if you start seeing yourself reacting in situations that aren't typical, right, then you know that you're not feeling safe in your nervous system. And yeah, socially, like I can remember going on a hike where we had to climb across these rocks, across this river, and everyone's like, "Oh, Shelley, she's fearless," blah blah blah, which was true. But suddenly, I was acting really, really anxious, and this has happened on several occasions. And people could just put it as anxiety, but I knew it wasn't. Like, I'm not anxious. I love this kind of adventure. I don't have anxiety. And it would get so frustrating when people would say, "You're just overreacting. You're being dramatic. You have anxiety." Not necessarily say it, but, people insinuate. So I think if you don't feel that it's something that's being addressed with talk therapy and you're not going through, then you need to go deeper. And basically, I would say that anyone with persistent concussion symptoms has some degree of a lack of safety in the nervous system. And they should just, look through it, address it, all the aspects, and make sure that that is not what's holding them back. So anyone who's plateaued, I guess you could say, anyone who isn't making progress in rehabilitating the symptoms. So this is something for therapists to know. If you're throwing your client into vestibular and they're doing all the work, no problem, boom, 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 then great. And vision therapy and all that. But if they're reaching plateaus and they're not improving, it's probably because of this, right? Because this is holding them back. And what we can do to help people recover from concussion better, from persistent symptoms, is just create safety for everybody in the nervous system as they recover. And even that could be just like, oh yeah, like, your system's perceiving threat. That's why you're, freaking out at the brakes and the cupboard doors and whatever. Like, just acknowledging that in the person is huge, right? And for a person to understand, oh, this is my nervous system. I have one client who she would tell people, my nervous system's broken. That's why I act like this. It's not really me, And sometimes, yeah, we don't know how to put a word on it, right? Words on it to tell other people. So
what helped me so much when I learned that I had dysautonomia, or that it was something that was a nervous system issue, not a psychological issue.
That's right.
Because it helped me to realize that maybe all the work I was putting into therapy and trying to heal, like, that was working. I just there was another process I also had to go through. And recognizing that when my heart rate is getting really high, sometimes it's not because I'm anxious. It's because I need to calm down my nervous system and do some deep breathing or some sort of autonomic, nervous system. I don't know. I can't think of the word right now. But
regulation.
Yeah, regulation. Yeah. Yes. To regulate and help my nervous system calm down and recover, which is a totally different thing than, number one, ignoring it and just thinking it's going to go away on its own. Or number two, being like, okay, well, I'm having an anxiety attack, and thinking that you're like spiraling, and then you end up spiraling. And
yeah. Oh, it's more frustrating if someone tells you it's anxiety. It just makes you even madder, because it's like, no,
I would tell myself that before. I thought that's what it was with me, and so it was very, very hard. And like, I had this neuropsychologist, bless her. She tried her best. She did what she knew how to do, but we had these biofeedback sessions, and she'd be like, recognize when, like, we would talk about stuff, and then, like, she'd be like, recognize when your heart rate goes up. And I was hooked up to stuff that was monitoring my heart rate and stuff like that. But there was absolutely no understanding that there could be anything besides anxiety causing it.
That's right.
And I think it helped me to an extent, because it did help me to be more self-aware of my body, but it didn't help in the sense of, it didn't help with the issue. And then the other piece of this as women is hormones, and how hormones relate to this. I found that my PMS symptoms are so much worse in conjunction with this. I don't know. Like, I know
because
I've talked to.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say the autonomic nervous system. Remember, it goes to all the different organs. So yeah, the hormones all fits into play in there. That's a whole nother topic, but yes, it can be affected
Yeah.
by an autonomic
And it's
nervous
so
system.
hard to
That's
tell.
crazy.
Is it your mood swings? Is it your hormones? Is it
Hmm.
your like frontal lobe issues? Is it your autonomic system? It's like the pieces of the puzzle and pulling them back. And until I got my like hormones regulated, which I did over the last couple of years of like supplements and nutrition changes, I had a functional practitioner I worked with on that. But when I first started dating my now husband, we just got married this summer, but we dated 3 years before that. And literally every month I would want to break up with him the week before my period, every month. And then I didn't realize the pattern until later. And I was like, I was having that my one doctor was like, she thinks I had PMDD. Like it was so bad, my PMS symptoms. Like I hated my life. I wanted to quit my job. I wanted to run away from everything. I wanted to break up with my boyfriend. Like I just couldn't handle anything. And then, my period would come
Yeah.
and I'd be okay. And so I didn't recognize it for a long time that that's what was happening. And I just felt like I was going crazy all the time. So there's so many pieces with brain injury and the nervous system. And there's so many different factors that can impact
Yeah, and
why
this is
you
what you
feel
brought up.
crazy.
Yeah, you bringing up such a great example is in that it's so complex. So when somebody messages me and like, I have a concussion, everything feels wrong. What should I do? It's like, that's not an answer I can give you on Facebook. That's like a deep dive because so many pieces are affected, right? And so when it comes back to this whole like safety in the nervous system, I want to point out a really great thing that you kind of touched on is that it's not just like right now, here and now. I can make myself feel safe right now. I can do the things, which I'm going to go over some of the treatments, but hand on heart, hand on belly, do my breathing. I feel safe. I feel strong. I'm okay. I'm calm. So I can do the self-talk. I can set everything up. But as soon as I walk out and get on my bike or walk out into the real world onto that hike, those perceived threats come back. Maybe some of those deep-rooted trauma. Oh yeah, shoot, I'm walking by the golf course, come back. And so I didn't get hit in the head by a golf ball. I just keep using that example. But so the point is, and then as soon as I go to clean out my car and I'm upside down now, I feel unsafe again. And I can't see in the dark. I feel unsafe again. It's triggered again. So when you're dealing with persistent concussion symptoms and you're dealing with impaired systems post-concussion, you have to remember that you have to actually create safety in this person in all different planes, in all different movements, in all different activities. So it's not enough to just work on a safe setting. We have to actually, and this is where OT comes in, because I want you to feel safe on that mountain, on that bike, in that, upside down position, cleaning out your car, because that's life, right? I want you to get back into life, into your meaningful activities. And this is why I love yoga as one of the treatments, is because it helps you feel safe, not only at rest, but with your head and your body in different positions, but in a slow, gradual way. And I know that a great clinic, and I can name a few, for rehab, they know this stuff. And they make sure that when you go in and you're about to go into all these different positions and all these different games and treatments, you're going to feel safe, and they're going to use practices. They're going to infuse that so that you can keep messaging that nervous system as you push into these impaired symptoms. You can keep messaging that nervous system that it's okay to get on the bike, and it's okay to climb across those rocks, and it's okay to go upside down. And does that make sense? So that's part of the treatment approach is creating safety in people who have impaired systems post-concussion. It's very specialized. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's so real. Like I lived so much of my life with feeling unsafe in my body and having repeat concussions, like you talked about before, impaired systems causing impaired systems, causing
Yes,
symptoms that would
that's right.
be, that causes the more injuries. Cause like I went with untreated vestibular dysfunction for almost
Mm-hmm.
10 years, for about 10 years.
Yep.
And I kept falling and getting more concussions. And people would be like, why do you keep hitting your head? And it's like, I don't know. I'm not trying to. But like, I would whack my head getting into the car. I had no spatial
Yes.
awareness perception. I had no like the what is it called? Proprioceptive system. Like I
Yeah.
had no walking into things, getting bruises all over myself, walking into door frames, like just falling down steps. Like I was constantly just this like, people would
Yeah.
joke that they should put me in bubble wrap. You know, they think it's
That's
funny.
right.
And I'm like, yeah, I know it's funny, but I don't feel good ever. And that's how I felt back then.
Exactly.
And
It's
like, I didn't
horrible.
even feel good on my own 2 feet, just standing. And, you
Hmm.
know, I play in instruments and I sing on like worship teams and like, I couldn't close my eyes for prayer at church because I would fall over with my eyes closed. So
There
it's
you
like, you
go. It
know, I
felt
would
too
have to just
unsafe.
like look at my feet. I couldn't feel unsafe. I couldn't feel safe in any scenario.
Yes,
So
that's right.
I'm like deeply resonating with what you're sharing, and I'm sure some of our listeners are as well. So I guess they're to ask for them. Um,
Hmm.
what do you do? Like, where do you go from recognizing, okay, I relate to this. I don't feel safe
Hmm.
in any of my scenarios. Now, how
Hmm.
do I move forward in trying to feel more safe in my own body? How do I get this assessed? Like, where do they go? What do they do?
Awesome question. So there's a lot you can do yourself, but also seeking professional assessment with clinicians who have expertise, up-to-date expertise in concussion, because the modern concussion world is looking at the multi-systems and adding all of this, holistic piece. And I call myself a holistic OT because I'm really honed into looking at your whole life, because it's one thing just what you do in this room, in this clinic right now, but then you walk out the door, now you have to drive home. Right? So I really think it's important to find holistic practitioners, and I'm going to go over what you can do though, because our audience listening is like, give me stuff. So first of all is compassion. Like finding compassion for yourself for all of those injuries is really hard, because you can have a lot of anger, a lot of questions. Why do I keep getting concussions? Because I went through the same thing as you. I had at least 8, minor concussions from that. And those add up. Those are going into the amygdala. Now you got a lot more feeling unsafe in every scenario. I don't feel safe in an off-leash dog park. Now I don't feel safe on stairs. Now I don't feel safe in the dark. I mean, it just adds up, right? So you need treatment for those impaired systems. Yes. So you're going to need to seek out some clinicians for that. But what you can do to start creating safety is first have compassion. So don't be angry at yourself. Recognize this isn't just anxiety. This is impaired nervous system. Then setting up your environment to feel safe. Sounds crazy, but like clean up your house, get rid of the clutter so there's nothing to trip over. Make your life
That's a
simpler.
hard one. Sorry, that's not easy to do when you have a brain injury. I struggle with that
Right?
organization because as soon as I start to clean one area, I get tired and then I can't continue
Yes,
and then I leave a bigger mess. Anyway, I
that's
had to
legit.
interject for those listening that
No,
go,
that's
"What do you
true.
mean clean up my clutter?"
Yeah,
That's a whole traumatic experience in itself. I don't feel safe doing that. I'm
that's a
sorry,
very
but you're
great
right.
point.
It is better to live without clutter. It is,
Yes, and
but
maybe get
sometimes
help.
getting there,
Yeah, get
I
some
have
help.
trauma clutter. I have trauma clutter, and I struggle. I admit, I got that
There you
problem.
go. So just clearing, it's like a method of clearing, It's like simplifying. Like I actually
Yeah,
moved, and we restarted and really made the home really zen post concussion, and it was such a great feeling for me, like a fresh start and a fresh we really, kept things really simple in this new home
yeah,
that we moved to. And so I think you want your environment to be stimulating yet calming. So you want the things that make you happy, right, in your environment. And you don't want it to be overstim, right? And you want it to be safe. So if you have to put those treads on the stairs, you know what? Don't delay on that. Like put those carpet treads on those slippery stairs, because then you're going to eliminate like an hour a day of going up and down the stairs where you're nervous, where your heart rate maybe goes flying up because they're slippery. Like there's little things like that you can do. Have a yoga room where you have space around you. You're not worried about anything over your head. Just creating a calm space. Set up your environment. And this is where clinics, good clinics, will be on top of this. You're not going to walk in. If you walk into a concussion clinic and the music's playing loudly and you can hear everyone talking, then you know it's not the right place for you, because they're not considering, that whole piece, setting up the environment for the person to feel safe. So that's one, change your environment. And you can do that in your workplace too, right? And this is why OT, this is what I like to help people do. I help people change their bike to get it up right so it feels safe, so many things that you can change at the gym, maybe in your music band, you can make adaptations. So that's one. The other, we talked about working on mindset and self-talk. So you start with that compassion. This is not anxiety. I am perceiving threat. This is real. I'm okay. I'm safe. There's talk therapy. Some people get great help from that. There's NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, EMDR. There's some different, practitioners that can help you. We do a lot of mindset and self-talk in yoga because we make it part of the class. So that's big. I do a lot of that in my own program, mindset work for post-concussion, because sometimes it's like, what's the right thing to say to yourself? And that's important, because it needs to not sound fake. It needs to be real, and you need to believe in yourself, right? So if you're just saying the words and they don't really mean anything and they're not going deep, it's not going to help you. So I have a client, for example, she says, I keep saying, I am safe, and it's not working. I don't feel any safer. And it's like, okay, because you're not believing yourself, right? And you haven't set it up to be actually safe. So that's two big pieces. Another piece is somatic exercises for safety. So that's like, you've probably heard of some of them, tapping. Some people are really into the tapping. So this is taking bottom up. Somatics means I'm bringing in physical things to my body to calm my nervous system and mind, to regulate. There's the self-hug, like a butterfly hug can feel really good. If anyone wants to try that right now. There's rocking, hands on your body. I like hand on heart, hand on belly. I do this a lot. If I'm on a hike or something and it's getting scary and I can feel my heart rate going up, I stop, hands on self, and really just take that moment. And you can create safety in that moment, feeling grounded and breathing. The practice of yoga, of course, is huge. And this was a game changer for me. And that's why I use it as a big part of my recovery practice. It helps you feel safe, not only with your head at rest, but in all different planes, like we said, because it's not good enough just to feel safe at rest. There's a whole world out there. There's your musicians waiting. There's my bikers ready, and we got to get out there. So we need to feel safe everywhere that we want to go, right? Not everywhere, but everywhere that we want to be in our lives. Breathing, meditation, that's all part of yoga, vagus nerve practices. And I think that singers in particular have an up on this one, because they're constantly using their breath for singing and humming, and it's very good for the nervous system, activates the vagus nerve, sets off great parts of the brain, and it's regulating to the nervous system. I'm sure Cristabelle can speak to that, but full circle, doing the stuff you love, and we can get into that a little bit to finish, but just getting a little bit into doing the stuff you love, because doing the stuff you love is part of your therapy. It allows you to surpass that feeling of scariness and threat. Like, if I love hiking so much, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to work my way through that perceived threat or that feeling of being unsafe, right? And so that's where it comes to OT, is using the stuff you love as part of your therapy. And I'd love to hear how music maybe helped you, Cristabelle, recover.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge part of it. It still really is. Especially I had right-sided weakness and right-sided dysfunction, and strumming the guitar with my right arm and rhythm. Like it just was very healing for that. And obviously singing too. And I didn't know anything about how singing helped the vagus nerve. I just knew I felt better when I was singing.
Isn't
So,
it true?
and it's also, I mean, I think music is just healing in general, and I don't want to get off topic, but I love how you said like doing the things you love, right? And what are the things that make you feel alive? What are the things that bring you joy? Where do you feel like yourself? Where do you feel
Yes.
whole? And
Yes.
and concussions, brain injuries, they take away so many parts of your life, and so many things get taken away, and there's so much loss and grief, which we didn't talk about too much in this episode, but we have talked about in others. There's a lot of grief and loss, and we have to acknowledge that, but also find the places that we do feel whole and that we feel joy, and that we, are able to be ourselves in. And like for me, yeah, music is a big part of that. And who are the people in your life that are your safe people? Is it your sister or your brother or your spouse or your boyfriend or girlfriend or a parent or a grandparent? Like, who's that person that makes you feel safe? Because I know for me, just spending time with somebody that loves me and that I love and that I feel safe with, that is a huge calm to me. Like, I mean, my
That's a
husband
great
brings
point.
me calm.
Yeah.
He, like, just sitting with him, we don't have to be talking or doing anything, but like when he's in the room, like I feel calm. And like it's been like that since, I've always felt safe with him.
That's
And
beautiful.
my sister is another person like that, and my mom, like, family, like I know when I'm around this person I feel calm. Now on the other side, if there are people where you don't feel calm, maybe you need to set boundaries, and that's a whole other conversation. But
But that's a great point
like,
because people is a part of that environment. We were talking the environment's not just physical. It's like what environment you put yourself in. And that's a really great
yeah,
point. Pets are another one of
yeah.
like people have for creating safety. Like if I love my dog, loving my dog, I have my bunnies, you have whatever. Do you have pets? Yeah.
Yeah, well, my parents have a dog and a cat.
There you go.
And my husband has a cat. So, I mean, obviously I
There
just
you go.
moved with him.
So,
So
yeah,
yeah.
that can be a piece of creating safety. It's just so cool. So can your
Hmm.
guitar create safety. And the cool thing is, these things are a part of our rehab. So even if you're not in the clinic doing active rehab, if you're a singer songwriter, you're doing memory, you're doing fine motor, you're doing nervous system, vagus nerve turn on, you're doing rocking, which is also self regulation. If you love yoga, you're doing neck exercises. If you love hiking, you're working on your cardio. I mean, this is where an OT lens is. I'm going to help you see how your activities are actually part of your rehab. And maybe you can add a little bit of this or a little bit of that to make it even more therapeutic. But finding, like, I love what you said about, doing the activities that bring you joy. That is a huge, huge piece of your rehabilitation. And it inherently does create safety. So safety can be so many things, physical, people, pets, and activities can be part of your therapy. So that's sort of my OT lens on it. And I absolutely love seeing people use their activities as their
Hmm.
rehabilitation. And it's just, it's really exciting. And it does require sometimes a lot of, and this is why I consult to people privately, is to really give them the strategies, right? And the adaptations, because it doesn't always come naturally. Like, well, I can't go hiking because I have symptoms, or,
Yeah.
but it's like, what could I do to make this work? How could I make this feel safe for me? And maybe it's all in the preparation and what kind of bag I take and who I go with and where I go. And there's just so many ways that you can make it work. So I hope that speaks
Mhm.
to people and where an
Yeah.
OT might fit in.
And to not lose those pieces of yourself that, because if we tell ourselves we can't do it, then you end up never doing it again. And then you have this profound sense of loss. And so it's like, how can we adapt activities or do things differently, and work our way towards it? But Yeah, I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, but we are closing in towards the end
Yeah,
of our
no
time here.
problem. That was a
So
great
just to,
conversation.
yeah, and just to reiterate, like that feeling of not being safe in your own body, um, if you felt that, that's very, I want you to know it's common after concussion or brain injury, and
Mhm.
finding a holistic practitioner like Shelley, somebody that is going to look at how your different systems integrate, is extremely important. I get so many people that message me or that come to our Zoom support groups and they're like, well, I tried vestibular therapy and it didn't do anything. And I just felt worse. And then I tried this and it didn't do anything. But they're trying everything separately,
Yes.
and under kind of like the old model of concussion rehab, where it's like, you're sent to one, then you're sent to another, and then you're sent to another. And not those practitioners, I guess they're doing what they were taught or the best that they know how to do, but they're not looking at any other things. And so, it really important to have a full picture of everything that's going on. And it's never going to be just like a one size fits all. And it's usually not going to be one thing. So I love this like nervous system piece, because this is something, like you said, affects everyone, really.
Mhm.
So how can we bring our nervous system to this place of safety? And so to reiterate, can you just sum it up for people? Can you go down like, what are the things they can do to help themselves feel safe?
Mhm. So finding holistic practitioner to guide you in returning to activity is huge, and rehabilitating some of the impaired systems. But again, you can't necessarily dive into rehabilitation of the systems if your nervous system's holding you back. So what you can do is set up your environment, including people, pets, life, your bike, your church, your home, to be stimulating yet calming, safety. You can work on mindset, self-talk. You can seek professionals for that. You can do somatic exercises to treat from the bottom up with the hands on the body, tapping vagus nerve. You can do the practice of yoga. You need to do things to learn to be safe in all planes, not just at rest. Breathing, meditation, vagus nerve, and doing the stuff you love. Using it as part of your therapy. So those are
Awesome.
some key ways to create safety in the nervous system. And I get really specific with my clients once we get into what do you do? And that's the first three things. I don't ask when I first meet someone. I'm like, what's your pain on a 0 to 10? Or what's all your symptoms? I don't even say that first. I say, who are you? And what are your three favorite things to
That's good,
do?
because I hate that 1 to 10 scale, because it's like so subjective. Because it's like somebody have a higher pain tolerance than someone else. I don't know. It's so
Yeah,
weird. I get annoyed, and I'm like, how do I put a number on it? I don't know. Anyway,
no. So it's more
thank you
like,
for not
who
asking
are
that.
you? Who are you? What do you love to do? And what's holding you back right now in your recovery? And a lot of times
That's
they'll be like,
good.
I don't know, but I just feel terrified to do anything. But that's where we start to put the pieces back together. So it can't
Yeah.
hurt to address this nervous system safety for everybody post concussion, because we're all
Mm.
going to have some degree of this after a traumatic event. So
Yeah.
that's my
That's
summary,
great.
is let's not forget this
Thank you.
piece, and let's help everybody understand it so that they don't waste
Yeah.
a ton of time and they don't hold themselves back in their own recovery.
Our final question I always ask our guests: what's our final words of hope for our listeners?
Everything is temporary, I think. Once you figure out this puzzle and put the pieces back together, you will have the life you love, doing the stuff you love, not necessarily exactly the same as before, but you will find joy and happiness again.
Thank you so much, Shelley. So, for people to get in touch with you, is it your Instagram? Where's the best place?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
OT Shelley on Instagram.
OT Shelley on Instagram is mostly where I hang out, making reels and having fun, seeing clients. And I also have a website, and I also operate a 3-month program, and you can find out all about that in my link tree on Instagram. Yeah, or Facebook.
Great.
I'm also over on Facebook, and I have a post-concussion group over there. So just look for OT Shelley on socials or website, and you can find out all the good stuff that I have going. So
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. I will put that in the show notes for people to be able to connect with you.
Thank
So
you.
I so appreciate you coming on the podcast. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Cristabelle. Bye for now.
Thanks. Thanks so much for tuning in to Hope Survives podcast. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned, and would love for you to consider leaving us a rating or a review. Check out hopeafterheadinjury.com for more. I'll see you next time. And remember, there's always hope.